we take a loan of 44.5 billion shillings, where the government is going to pay interest rate quantum of 100 billion in 15 years. So the Talanta Stadium, you see, the cost is not 44.5 billion. And I've been repeating this and I want to repeat. The real cost is over 140 billion Kenya shillings. They're in the process now of securitizing your housing levy. That the housing levy Kenyans are paying, so that they remove the talk of whether it can be reduced or not. The government is again kicking off the process of securitizing. Securitizing is just a heavy word to confuse Kenyans. Of borrowing through mortgaging the housing levy. So they are collecting it in advance. Infrastructure fund is only a composition of two things: sale of government assets, including Safaricom, and more borrowing. All the other hurabalo you hear, the bottom line is that, as we talk with you here, Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings in the official book of loans. So Kenya is borrowing 3.5 billion shillings every day, including today. It is important we zoom into all the transactions that are happening in Kenya of late. I saw the other day a Tanzanian company with a Kenyan unit called Kalahari Cement buying the stake in East African Portland Cement that belonged to NSSF, again taking it for a song. Why is this massive interference with NSSF? That a person who is not Kenyan can see value in East African Portland Cement that NSSF, that is investing workers' resources, cannot see in a local company. We must be vigilant. Otherwise, within a very short time, we are all going to regret as Kenyans, because we'll have nothing to hold on to. Everything will have been torn down in terms of sold for nothing, and you'll have no fallback position. And on the same, I have been saying, and I want to repeat, there is a new jargon in town called infrastructure fund. Infrastructure fund is only two things, and Kenyans should know that. One was sale of Safaricom, which is now Adawi. Number two is more borrowing. So anyone who needs to know what infrastructure fund is, just keep on watching the lips of everyone talking about it and match with the actions. It is either sale of government assets at a discount, definitely, or more borrowing. And these things are important. And I don't think there is something more important than the economy of Kenya to all of us. Look at it this way. Kenya has already taken a loan using fuel levy. The money you pay for fuel levy has already been collected in advance for the next 7 years, and they want to take another one that will take us for the next 10 years. Meaning, the tax you are going to pay for the next 7 years has been collected today and spent. The unfortunate thing, and especially around that fund, is that local institutions, and especially banks, took part, and especially banks where GOK has a stake or controls. That we are collecting taxes because levy is like tax. The money that was to construct roads for the next 7 years has already been collected as we talk. I don't know whether I'm making sense, because you need to understand that because the government is looking at 2027 and nothing else, they are staking the future of this country in the name of elections. So we want to do everything that Kenyans can see. It doesn't matter whether we are getting into an abyss, and it doesn't matter whether we are going to recover from it. So we have taken fuel levy that was to be collected by Kenya for the next 7 years. That money has already been spent. Secondly, tourism fund has already been securitized or in the process of being securitized. The process has already kicked off. So when you see Bombers of Kenya coming up, that is again an illegal loan, because all these securitization business is illegal. I've been talking about Talanta Fund, and you may wonder why there is no person in government giving a rejoinder. Because if there are no facts, then you should give the facts as the National Treasury. That this year, we borrowed 44.5 billion Kenya shillings, where Kenya is going to pay an interest rate or an interest sum of 100 billion Kenya shillings in the next 15 years. Can you imagine that? Just because we want claps, now we take a loan of 44.5 billion shillings, where the government is going to pay interest rate quantum of 100 billion in 15 years. So the Talanta Stadium, you see, the cost is not 44.5 billion. And I've been repeating this, and I want to repeat. The real cost is over 140 billion Kenya shillings. So we need to ask ourselves as Kenyans whether these are the kind of decisions that we want made for our economy. Now, they're in the process now of securitizing your housing levy. That the housing levy Kenyans are paying, so that they remove the talk of whether it can be reduced or not. The government is again kicking off the process of securitizing. Securitizing is just a heavy word to confuse Kenyans. Of borrowing through mortgaging the housing levy. So they are collecting it in advance. Now, what this is doing to the economy, and it is deliberate, the government is running away from budget. They want to control development in another book called Infrastructure Fund. And I just want to repeat, Infrastructure Fund is only a composition of two things. Sale of government assets, including Safaricom, and more borrowing. All the other hurabalo you hear, the bottom line is that. Now, let me interest you something else as I finish. As we talk with you here, Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings in the official book of loans. 1.25 trillion Kenya shillings per year in the official loan book. So Kenya is borrowing 3.5 billion shillings every day, including today. By end of today, Kenya will have borrowed a net of 3.5 billion. And a net here, I mean, I have not included the money the government is borrowing to pay previous loans. That is called refinancing. I have not added. The figure I am giving is purely net debt. To put it into context, President Kibaki in his 10 years borrowed a net of 1.2 trillion Kenya shillings in 10 years. So we are borrowing in 1 year what Kibaki borrowed in 10 years. It is important for Kenyans to keep on knowing these things. Because this kind of recklessness cannot go for too long. And we have very recent case scenarios. We have Senegal, which is now in red. 2 guys elected very popularly last year, Diomaye Faye and Osman Sonko, themselves hata hawasikizani wenyewe. Because by the time they took over, there were illegal debt like securitization amounting to 13 billion US dollars. Illegal ones, taken off the book. Like Talanta Fund, like securitization, like securitization of dividends, like the government is doing in the sale of Safaricom, and the rest. We can learn from Zambia. We can learn from Sri Lanka that it is a slippery path we are taking our country into. We can learn from Ghana. Ghana was unable to service debts. So what did they do? They called all the government creditors and they told them, if you have lent the government $1 million shillings, either through buying a board or a T-bill, the government called them and told them, We no longer owe you 1 million. We owe you 70% of that. End of story. Can you imagine? So the route we are taking will definitely lead us there. And I'm calling upon the government. Let us not stake Kenyans' future on the general election in a year to come or so. There will be Kenya after 2027. And Kenyans, ask yourself, why is the government, if you collect dividends for the next 5 years, so in the mind of government, there will be no Kenya in the next 5 years or what? When you take fuel levy to be collected in Kenya for the next 7 years to build roads, are you telling us there will be no roads in Kenya to be built? As I come to the conclusion, I have indicated that Kenya is borrowing 1.25 trillion shillings every year. But even the developments that we are seeing, including the expansion of Nairobi-Nakuru Highway, we now have had to force NSSF to invest workers' resources in that road, while the government knows for sure it will never break even. Now that we are selling a stake in Safaricom, why can't the government provide that road for free to all the people in the western side of this country? Must we package it as a commercial project? Now that we have another source of the sale of Safaricom stake, why can't the government invest some of this money into a road, and especially Nairobi Mau Summit Road? Why? That a Kenyan in the western part of this country, from Nakuru all the way, who pays pay, who pays VAT, who pays fuel levy, again is made by government to build their own road. Because paying toll is basically government abdicating its job to provide public goods and telling Kenyans, tumewaletea hawa watu mujisort mujenge nao barabara. That's basically what the government has done in that road. And we are going to keep on talking about this issue, that the people from Nakuru all the way deserve, like any other Kenyan, to use that road for free without tolling. Because we are borrowing every day. We are borrowing both in the book and off the book. We are now selling government stakes. Then why again make Kenyans to pay for the road? I have also heard the drums of every day. They are beaten about the expansion of the road from Pagani, Muthaiga, Kiambu, Duberi. And it has now come up again. I want to request you, my brothers and sisters, go to your own files in terms of the media files, previous ones. And you'll see that you covered the issue of the expansion of that road in 2021 and 2022. If you go to the files, even Google now, you realize that the expansion of Pagani, Muthaiga, Kiambu, Duberi Road was conceptualized and completed in 2022. But the government had to wait until we are near elections to beat the drums. The government should actually be apologizing to the people of Kiambu for delaying the road for 3 years.